in the back room and just enjoying the evening, staying warm because it's cold outside. I don't know if it got to over 30 degrees here today, and we got quite a bit of snow. We probably got 5 or 6 inches of snow. So a lot going on outside. So we're happy to be inside, and you know, again, not a lot of people in here, but doing some social distancing, and we got our screen up here to, you know, keep us safe from all the COVID stuff going on. So excited to be on Facebook Live again with Mick, and you know, sponsor tonight. Gotta get my sponsor in. Riverview Insurance. Happens to be my brother's company, our insurance company, or whatever you call it, agency.
How were you able to land this deal?
Well, here's the funny story, because last week during this show, he said, how much to be your permanent sponsor? And I didn't respond. I forgot to respond. Good businessman, right? Forgot to respond about somebody wanting to be a sponsor. And today I just sent him a text and said, hey, by the way, you're our sponsor. We'll talk about how much it's going to cost you later. So we're going to get that going. So, but excited to have him. And he's always been obviously very helpful with Higher Power Sports and everything we do. So appreciate all he does. And obviously, if you need any insurance, any kind of insurance, he can cover it. Investments, all that kind of stuff. So I got Mondays with Mick here with Mick, Gary. Mick, crazy day for you. Obviously, you know, you're a Sanford employee, and Sanford had some pretty big news today.
Yeah, introducing a merger with Intermountain Healthcare, based out of Utah. I mean, it's one of these very public acts that involves healthcare and hospitals, and by nature, probably some cynicism on the part of you know, people who don't know the situation. But I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great for the people in Sioux Falls. I think it's going to be great for healthcare in the region, and I'm fired up about it.
Well, that's good, because anytime there's a merger, you think, oh, you know, what heads are rolling here? And but you're pretty confident that they like your group and they like, you know, what the stuff you're doing. So
yeah, and it's I mean, the complexities of merging healthcare systems, I'm certainly not capable of speaking exactly to those things, but I think that definitely today, the message we heard is that everybody's going to win in this deal, and I'm glad that it happened.
Awesome. Well, let's get right to our guest, and I'm excited to have this young man on our show tonight. And he was older than you were yesterday. So we'll get to that in a second, because our guest has a birthday today. But our guest today is Paul McDonald. And Paul, you know, welcome. And where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from colder than you are, Ely, Minnesota. I've been resident up here for over 30 years, and it's supposed to get down into the single digits tonight. I think you guys have more snow than we do, but it's supposed to get into the balmy low 40s by the weekend up here. So maybe we'll lose the snow that we do have, and really looking forward to talking with you guys tonight.
Awesome. Can you hear us good?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. All right. So let's get right into it. The McDonald name, McDonald legacy, in Minnesota is pretty well known. You know, obviously we're Facebook Live. We're in South Dakota right here. A lot of people from all over the country will be listening to this. Let's introduce them to the McDonald's of Chisholm. And, you know, kind of, you know, did you went to school there, obviously, all your brothers did. When did your family move to Chisholm?
Well, my dad was a 1951 Chisholm grad, and then accepted a basketball scholarship at the University of Michigan, 1951, and then he got homesick. He came back to Hibbing Junior College at the time and played with a guy by the name of Dick Darmaker, who was all NBA a number of years and ended up being all Big Ten. And in Big Ten Hall of Fame from Hibbing, and they went all the way to the national finals in the junior college ranks, lost to Tyler, Texas in 1952. Graduated with his AA degree from Hibbing Junior College, and then went on to a stellar career, leading scorer for the UMD Bulldogs for his junior and senior season, and then took a job in McGregor, Minnesota, 1955. My brother Mike was born while he was there, and then I followed Mike, born in 1957, as you said earlier, happened to be on this date. Spent 4 years at McGregor, and then moved to Barnum, was 2 years at Barnum, and then spent 53 years back at his alma mater at Chisholm High School. And he was a blue streak through and through from day one, and it was just apropos that he ended up back in Chisholm. You know, and the thing that's crazy is he coached until he was 80 years old, and all of us kids followed him into the coaching realm. Mike has been a longtime coach at Cambridge High School in Minnesota. I spent 35 years in coaching, 5 years at the high school level, and then 30 years at the community college in Ely at Vermilion Community College. My brother Tom has been 30 plus, played at South Dakota State, been 30 plus at the high school here in Ely. My sister Sue also went to South Dakota State and played women's basketball there. She coached for a number of years at Crosby Ironton. My sister Judy, another Jackrabbit, coached at Nashua Keewatin in Fairmont. And the baby of the family, Joel, who was at one time the all-time leading scorer in the state of Minnesota, he didn't become a Jackrabbit. He ended up being a Husky, going to St. Cloud State, and was an All-American there. So we all followed my dad into the coaching realm, and it was something where we could give back to a game that was so good to us. And, you know, when you look at it, I have nothing but good memories about playing for my dad. You know, we won state championships in 1973, 1975, and also a third place finish in 74. But, you know, red and blue of the Blue Streaks, it was a wonderful time.
Absolutely. And Mick and I both growing up in Minnesota, Mick from Austin, Minnesota, and then I grew up in Lee Center, Minnesota until my junior year. Then we moved to South Dakota here. Obviously, Chisholm Blue Streaks are legendary. Let's continue to talk about your dad first for a little bit. I believe the number is 1,012. Was that the final number of wins?
That is correct, and well under 300 losses. So when you think about it, you know, I made a statement at my retirement event when I retired from Vermilion that, you know, he won over 1,000 games, and I spent 35 years coaching, and I didn't even coach anywhere near 1,000 games. And, you know, it just sort of marvel at what he accomplished. And when he started in the 50s and into the 60s, he was well known as a very strict disciplinarian. Carried that on to the 70s. You know, we were sort of the anti. A lot of people had longer hair, was the hippie era in the 70s, and we had very short haircuts and always came to the games in suits and ties. And as I told a number of people this past week, reminiscing about my dad, you either loved us or you hated us. And as successful as we were, we sort of thrived on that image and used it to our advantage.
So yeah, you mentioned you either loved you or hated you. And obviously, in the Lee Center, we didn't get to play Chisholm, so we loved you because we love to watch, you know, the way you guys played and how hard you guys always played. But that's something that your dad instilled. I mean, you guys were disciplined, but you also had a fun type of play. You know, it wasn't 90 passes in the shooting. He let you get up and down the court a little bit, didn't he?
Oh, a lot. I mean, you look at, you know, the way we played, we played 84 feet. We were in your face, full court pressure, making you play our style of game and up tempo. And, you know, we created a lot of offense off of our defense. We played in a little Cracker Box at Chisholm, and historically, you know, the one thing I always look back at, I never lost a game in that gymnasium from the time I started playing in 5th and 6th grade, all the way through my senior year in high school. We never lost a game in that gymnasium, and it was intimidating. It was sort of a pit. They had a sign as you walked in, "Welcome to the pit," and they had restraining line and around all four corners. So it was sort of like a gladiator pit, and the band was underneath one of the overhangs, and you know, it was just a very, very unwelcoming environment for the visitors, a very welcoming environment for the home team, and it was a fun place to play.
Paul, I'm remembering watching, like when I was about 10 years old, watching you guys play, and you know, the state tournament was on TV in Austin, Minnesota, and so we really got a chance to see you guys play over that time. And but number one, the crew cuts, and like who now it would be there's a bunch of kids who play basketball who have short hair, but back then it was like it was at a time when everybody was kind of looking like the drummer for REO Speedwagon, and it was very distinctive at the time, and it had to be. I suppose there was a kind of a like us against the world thing with those short haircuts, but it had to be. It was viewed from the outside as a huge sacrifice that you guys had to wear your hair like that. Was that a deal where you groaned about it? Obviously you didn't, because you're part of the deal, but did some of your teammates not like that?
You know, some of them, like in football season or baseball season, would grow their hair out a little bit, and then my dad would always make the comment or come up and pull the hair by their ears. It's getting a little long there, but you know, I think I was fortunate. My mother was our barber, and she gave us the haircuts. But at the local barber shops in town, all you had to do was walk in and tell them you want the Bob McDonald special, and they knew exactly what you were talking about. And you know, Ed Osteniger was one of the barbers there, and his son ended up being a very good player. Now the coach at St. Scholastica up in Duluth. And I mean, you just think about all those things in something like a short haircut in those days. It sent the message that we meant business.
Absolutely. And as you went on and playing for your dad, and then having the opportunity playing with Mike, you know, how did that work out as far as, you know, Mike was on varsity. When did you come on varsity, and how did it work out, you two playing together?
Well, Mike was a year older than I, and we were both fortunate enough to play varsity basketball. I was a freshman in 1973 when we beat Mark Oberding and Melrose on a last-second shot in the championship game. And then as a sophomore and Mike as a junior, we met again in the semifinals with Melrose, and they had a little revenge going, and they got the better of us, and we beat Waseca in the third place game. And then in 1975, Mike's senior year, we beat a very good mechanic arts team led by Elmer Bailey, who went on to NFL fame, and Benny Hill, and you know, beat them in a game where they slowed the ball down on us, held the ball, and tried to keep us out of our running game. So you know, my dad said it was a compliment to the way we played by somebody not wanting to run with us, and we still made enough plays to come out with a victory in that. And then all my buddies left, and my senior year in 1976, we sort of came with a bunch of new guys besides myself, and then ended up tearing up my knee halfway through my senior year. Came back, we ended up losing in the section finals to the Orr Braves, who went on to the state tournament.
And a couple more things about your dad. You mentioned over 50 years of coaching, and you know, the record and all that, but you know, what are some memories you had at that time growing up, you know, outside the haircuts, maybe some of his tendencies in the locker room, or how he got you ready for games or anything like that?
Well, that was the thing that made us as good as we were. We have very competitive practices. My sophomore and freshman year, some of the best games we had were actually in practice. And the young guys would push the older guys and bring out the best in all of us. And my dad was sort of way ahead of his time. I mean, some of the sets we ran, he ran forever. I mean, we talked about this at the funeral and at the get together afterwards. That I guarantee all of us could get out on the court right now, and if somebody hollered out a number, we could run that play. It was just instilled in us. I mean, you talk about all that horn stuff and this, that, and everything else. We were running that in the 70s. And people were like, whoa, this is something new. And I used to tell people, I said, I don't think it's new. They might have a different name for it now. But, you know, he was up tempo. He always said, you know, don't blame me for your inadequacies, you know, and you know, he didn't want his second team coming in there and playing a different style than what the first team did, because those people were going to have to step in at some time and pick up where we left off. And, you know, we scored a lot of points, and we also played some pretty good defense.
Paul, that was another thing that back in the day, I mean, you look at your dad as being this old school guy, but he acknowledged that scoring points is a big part of basketball, which a lot of coaches, and you know better than me, but don't really want to acknowledge that. But the Chisholm boys who could fill it up, that had to be kind of fun.
Well, no doubt. And, you know, and that's the other thing. My dad sacrificed a lot of personal time to open the gym. And I remember as second, third, fourth grader, you know, going down there on Saturdays and Sundays and, you know, playing and watching older guys play and trying to mimic what they could do. And, you know, my dad always had his Saturday morning basketball program. He called his program Diapers to Death. I mean, you were a blue streak from the time you came on the earth till the time you left the earth. And, you know, people always think of Northern Minnesota as a hockey hotbed, which it is. And in our era was really, you look at a lot of people on the 1980 Olympic team. I watched a lot of those guys play high school hockey on the Iron Range. And he said, well, hockey's starting their kids at second grade. Well, we're going to start basketball as kindergartners. And then as soon as you start as a kindergartner, then a 4-year-old comes in and says, hey, can I come in? And my dad would always take him. You know, and you look at what he accomplished program-wise, and a lot of people don't realize this, but he ran the entire program K through 12. Never had anybody else really helping him. He had a lot of volunteers come in and work during it, but he ran the program. So when you were in a grade school tournament, you were running the same stuff that you were going to run when you were on the varsity level. And I think that execution, as both you guys know, I think that's what it comes down. I remember playing the McHale teams of Hibbing, and we always would go into that game. They know exactly what we're going to do, and we would change a number here and there, and they'd say, aren't you supposed to be over here? What are you doing over here? You know, and so that whole mental aspect of the game, I think that's another way my dad was ahead of his time. He was always, you know, getting us mentally prepared. We went into some environments that weren't very friendly when we were on the road, but you know, we sort of blocked all that stuff out, and he let us do, you know, be very creative. You know, he let us do a lot of things that were sort of out of the box at that time. And you know, we patterned our warm up after Bill Musselman, Flip Saunders, and the Gopher warm up. And, you know, we put on a show prior to the game because my dad said people are coming to watch and be entertained. And the way we played was entertainment. And at the time, with a $2 ticket, that was pretty cheap entertainment.
Yeah, and a couple things that I remember about your dad, or remember that really struck out when I saw him. One, he was being interviewed on a television station one time, and it was after the game, and you mentioned him being in charge of K through 12, the basketball program. And it was after the game, and they're in the gym, and it's packed. All these little kids are shooting. Any other gym you go to, they're told to get the heck out of there. But he's being interviewed, and he's allowing all these kids to shoot. I thought that was pretty interesting, and what a great thing for those young kids to be able to do after they watch their heroes, the Blue Streaks, win a game and then get to go and shoot those baskets just like they just saw their heroes do.
Yeah, that was one thing. At halftime was the same way. At the end of the game, the kids would just rush down there, and pretend they were so and so. And I'm Joel McDonald. I'm shooting this, and that's how he used other people to build his program. And the thing that it was never about him. He was the most selfless person that I know. It wasn't about the wins. Wasn't about this. It was about making young men and women into better people. And the way he did that, was like I keep saying and coming back to it, was ahead of his time. I mean, he gave you enough rope, and if you didn't do it his way, you hung yourself. I mean, and there was a lot of people that he ended up having some issues with that probably could have won him some more games, but didn't want to do it his way. And now those people, after they got out of high school, realized that, my dad was right. And some of his closest friends were the people that he had some issues with during their high school careers.
Very good. And let's talk about your dad. Once you all, you mentioned all you guys you and your brothers and sisters going on to play college basketball. What was your dad's, how was he as a fan or a parent once you guys graduated and you were out doing your own? First of all, talk about when you were playing, and then maybe talk about how he was as you all got into coaching.
Right. People always ask me, how tough was he to play for? It was no tougher than anybody else because he didn't treat anybody any differently. Everybody was treated the same. You talked about earlier, some of his mannerisms. I mean, you knew at halftime who was going to get their butt chewed. And so it was a race. We had 2 towels in the locker room. And it was a race to get those 2 towels because you could put it over your face and hide your smile and your laughter if it wasn't your turn in the barrel. And, we all had those moments where, I remember one time, if you remember Janet Lynn, the Olympic skater, won bronze medal or something in the 70s in the Olympics. And we were playing Hibbing, and he came into the locker room and he was pretending he was skating, and we were like, what is going on here? This is no. And he said, does this remind you of anybody? And the middle guy in our press, who was very adept at making steals, for some reason that day, he was half a step behind everything. So he would just slide by nothing, and then they'd end up with another. This is so-and-so. He reminds me of Janet Lynn, and we're like, oh my gosh, how can we not break out laughing? Because if he saw you smiling, then it went the whole other direction. It was, you're not listening, you're not paying attention, etc. So, there's another story of, he came in the third place game in 1974, and we stunk in the first half. We were still playing Melrose and licking our wounds from the night before. And he came in, and I'll never forget, he gave a boot to this metal garbage can as he came into the locker room at the Civic Center. And, we didn't think a whole lot about it. And he read us the riot act and sent us back out on the floor. I think there was 6 or 7 minutes left in the halftime, and we never came out till probably 2.5 minutes. And as we walked out, we looked at that garbage can, and he had kicked a hole in that steel garbage can. And needless to say, that sent a message to all of us that, hey, we better pick this up. And we probably played the best half we did all year in that second half, and then ran away with it in that third place game.
That's great. Now talk about, as you guys graduated, went to play college basketball and then went on to be coaches. How did he influence you there, or how did he support you guys during that time?
Well, he didn't get a chance to watch us a whole lot in college, as they're playing games at the same time. But I will, thanks to WNAX, believe it or not, they could go up in the car on top of one of the mine dumps and get a signal most of the time and listen to Storm and Norman Hilson on WNAX and listen to the Jackrabbits game. And I can just imagine my mom and dad, both of them, smiling right now, thinking of me talking about those stories of them sitting up on a mine dump, listening to, all the kids play in those games with Norm Hilson at the helm. But, he never stepped on your toes a whole lot when you were coaching. I was fortunate enough, in my high school days of coaching, we never played Chisholm. I figured, why the hell do we want to play Chisholm and get our butts handed to us and have to go back into the gym that I played in and know what was going to happen. So, and then as I started to watch my other brothers play against Chisholm, it was a tough time to go. And then when Joel took over for the Hibbing Blue Jackets, my arch rival, a lot of people judged the Chisholm season on two games, the two games you played against Hibbing. They didn't really care what happened in the other ones. And now my brother was coaching over there. So that sort of squelched that rivalry a little bit, probably for a good thing, because when we played, it was nothing but blood and guts and packed houses, 2,000-3,000 people packed in a 1,500 seat gym. And, you look at what he did. And the only question he always would ask you is, are you pressing? I hope you're pressing. You got to get after people. Don't let them get a free bring up of the ball, and we tell them, oh, yeah, we're pressing. And I know my brother Mike would always tell him, yeah, we're pressing, just to appease him before he always, would say, well, you gotta go. And that was his game. And that, he used it to his benefit, no doubt.
One thing, Paul, and I think we've been talking about this already, but you look at, your father known as a strict disciplinarian and all this, but all his kids stayed in the game. That's the biggest endorsement to me, is that you guys love basketball, and you grew up in an environment where everybody loved it, and that has to be a huge endorsement for the way your father went about his business.
Well, there's no doubt. And the other thing a lot of people don't realize is my dad ran the summer recreation department in Chisholm for well over 20 years. So Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. till 4:30, he was doing not only basketball, but he taught everybody in Chisholm a lot of games. We were playing Tin Can Alley, we were playing badminton, we were doing this, we were doing that. Of course, there was a basketball league, there was a baseball league, there was a softball league. He was a softball pitcher for one of the best softball pitchers on the Iron Range. And I told this story to Patrick Royce the other day, and he was the only guy that we would change his uniform number every year. And his last year he played, he was number 57 because we put his age on there, and we was up there striking out all those young guys. It was always good, to turn and show him the back. And, I said, God, this guy's 57 years old and he's striking me out. Come on now, something's got to be wrong. But he was the ultimate competitor. Didn't matter if we were playing cards or we were playing softball or playing basketball. He wanted to do his best, and he instilled that in us as well.
And you mentioned, Paul, the funeral, and, we just lost your dad a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. What's it been like? Maybe talk about, what's it been like reliving those stories, and maybe the support you've got from, the Chisholm community, the Minnesota basketball community, the basketball community worldwide, really.
Yeah, it was really comforting for all of us as a family to have as many people reach out as did. I mean, when you look at the television stations in the metro area, up here in Duluth, in that area, I mean, Mike Max did an outstanding tribute to him on CCO. Patrick Royce had a great article in the Star Tribune, and a couple of his former players, one writes down in Mankato, had a heck of a column in the paper down there. And it just, it doesn't make it any easier, but it really shows the legacy that he had and all the people that he touched. And it doesn't matter. Yeah, there was a lot of people that he touched in Chisholm, but the number of people that came to me, his old adage used to be, he'd go later in his career, he'd always have a bunch of $1 bills in his wallet, and they'd go up to Big Fork, for instance, one of our arch rivals, and the young kids would be going out and shooting at halftime in a B game, and he'd give them $1 to go to the concession stand because he didn't want them practicing too much. So when they get into high school, they were going to beat the Blue Streaks. So he knew how to work it, and he just enjoyed the people. I mean, he had a coffee room at the gym in Chisholm, and there's many times when his assistants would have to go in there and say, "Hey, Bob, there's 5 minutes. We got to go in the locker room," because he was in there holding court with various people that happened to be at the game. And, he made it a shrine in the Chisholm gym. He had every captain that was ever up there. I mean, since 1921 till 2014, there were 3 coaches in Chisholm. And one of them was only there for 10 years. So when you think of that, one had 53 years, another one, I think Harvey Rolls had 47. It's sort of amazing. And that's how you build a program. You guys know as well as I do. When you've got stability at the helm, things don't change, and the chances for success are greatly increased.
Before we move on to maybe talk a little about your and maybe some of your brothers and sisters' stories at South Dakota State. Let's talk about your mom real quick. You mentioned Coach Steniger over at St. Scholastica. I had a chance to coach with Coach at Augsburg, and there wasn't a lady in this world besides his mom that he held a higher regard than your mom, and he talked about her all the time. What was she like? Bob McDonald's wife, all these coaches, all these victories, all these kids going through her own, and then all those other kids. How did she handle that?
Well, that's the thing. My mom passed away about 25 years ago. Seems like yesterday at sometimes, but she was what I would call a coach's dream. I mean, she was as invested, if not more invested, in the basketball program than my dad was. I mean, she was the chief statistician. She did most of the hollering at the referees. They all knew her on a first name basis, and she was also the number one baker for the coffee room, and people would talk about her glazed donuts and talk about her caramel rolls, and they look forward to that coming to eating those as well. But she was a person that always told my dad, when you come into the house, this is my house, and we're not spending all the time talking about basketball, this and that and everything. It was family time. And my dad was, a lot of people don't know, he was a hell of an oil painter. He would sit at the table for hours on end. That was his release. And, he loved Croatia. He was a Perkovic by name, and made 20 plus trips over to his homeland. And he loved painting pictures of Croatia. And all of us kids have at least one, if not more. I have more in my house, and people can't believe that RJ McDonald that's painted in the corner is really something that my dad did, because it is fabulous artwork.
Very cool. Now let's move on to, you mentioned South Dakota State, and a lot of your brothers and sisters went there, but how did Paul McDonald get to you from Chisholm to South Dakota State?
Well, coming out of high school, I had accepted a scholarship offer at the University of Minnesota. Bill Musselman was the coach at that time and offered me a scholarship. And I was drinking the Musselman Kool-Aid. I wanted to be a part of that. They packed that place, and I had some very successful teams. And then I think it was early in my senior season, the NCAA came in, put them on probation, and cut their scholarships in half. I happened to be one of the guys that was cut from the scholarship program. So, they wanted me to walk on, and, I really didn't want to do that. In the meantime, the University of Nebraska came in and offered me a scholarship. I ended up going there my freshman season, played for Mo Iba and Joe Cipriano there. Had a very good experience there, but something was missing. I mean, their style of play wasn't what I was used to. And I had visited South Dakota State coming out of high school, and I got in contact with Coach Zulk and was wondering if he would be interested in possibly transferring there. And I started a long line of McDonald's coming to Brookings and playing for the Jackrabbits.
Awesome. And maybe talk about that experience a little bit. What were your teams like when you were a Jackrabbit? I'm sure there's people listening that remember those days, but obviously the state U rivalry is back on, and maybe mention some of those games.
Yeah, you look at, I think we were the only team to win what was called the Triple Crown in 1980. We won the holiday tournament, which was always down at the arena in Sioux Falls. We won the regular season championship, and then we also won the postseason tournament, and ended up hosting a regional in Brookings and played very well in that. I played with Jim Walker, who was the MVP of the league that year, Steve Lingenfelter, Bob Winsenberg, Johnny Brown, who coached for many years up at Bryant, and Kevin McNamara, Phil Jorgensen, Brian Omlid, Scott Frederick out of Mitchell. I mean, we had a very good team, and went down to Lakeland, Florida in the quarterfinals when they were, we played Florida Southern down there, and the Jackrabbit fans thought we definitely got jobbed in that one. It was a very interesting crowd that night. I think 3 or 4 times the security officers had to hold the fans back from coming on the floor after the officials. But you look back at those years in Brookings, and when you lead the nation in attendance, which we did Division II, and it just amazing the people that packed into Frost Arena to watch us play, and it was entertainment. And you look at that, as I asked about John Egan before we went on the air, and he wrote the article when we played the first game down at the Dakota Dome. I think there was about 9,000 people and 1 police officer at that game, and it was crazy. And I had thrown a lob pass to Steve Lingenfelter, and he had one hell of a slam to shake the basket. And a bottle came out of the crowd and grazed me in the head, hit me in the head, and then hit the floor, and it exploded like a grenade. And, I went down. I was okay, thank goodness. And, they called the game with about 15 seconds to go. And, it was interesting. About 3 weeks later, the Coyotes came up to Brookings for the rematch, and the place, I don't think you could have fit anybody else in there. And they introduced me in the starting lineups, and I sort of had a rat pack of guys that used to be very vocal on not only cheering for the Jackrabbits, but going against any opponent that we were. And they came out and put a hard hat on me prior to the game, and then they threw out a big plastic whiskey bottle, and we proceeded to knock off Jack Doyle's Coyotes in a very entertaining game.
And
You can't make this stuff up.
yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is that's one story. If you talk to any jackrabbit or coyote, they have a story, maybe not identical, but similar to that because of the rivalry with the fans and obviously the players, and very good basketball between the two. And when you get 9,000 fans in any gym, but those two, the Dakota Dome, obviously, but in Frost Arena, that was a fun atmosphere to be in.
Oh, no doubt. I remember my redshirt year down in Vermilion. They had one of our cheerleaders got hit with a frozen coyote that came out of the crowd. And I mean, you tell people, they're throwing the combs at Barry Glanzer. When he was introduced, they throw the combs. And then when we would come out on the floor at Augustana, they just pelt us with carrots. And, you don't see that anymore because it's dangerous, but you think back at it and you're like, lucky somebody didn't get hit in the eye with one of those carrots or whatever it happens to be. But, you just, the memories from those rivalries, USD and Augie, and, you go up I-29 and play the Sioux and the Bison. I mean, it was one heck of a league.
Absolutely.
So I interviewed you. This would have been early 90s. And you said something about the guy that you met, the guy who threw the bottle at, that hit you with the bottle?
Yeah, the guy that hit me with the bottle, I knew the guy. And again, he wasn't throwing it at me. I mean, I remember picking up the footballs to Coughlin Stadium after the football games at State. And you know what you found on the bottom of the bleachers at State. There was plenty of bottles, put it that way. And, he threw the bottle out there and, but it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I found out through some mutual friends who threw it. And I was like, well, okay. And he was a golfer down at the USD who I knew. And and I had that article that you penned. I had that up on my bulletin board in my office at Vermilion. And a lot of people read that article, and, you went through the whole history and brought in Willie Sanchez, who called the first technical on the crowd that, I think it was the carrots that were thrown or a jackrabbit. I can't remember what, but he called technical on the crowd. And, it was something that you had to be there and see it to really believe what happened.
Well, we're going on about 40 minutes. You got a couple more minutes with us?
Go for it.
We got to get you out of here so you can celebrate your birthday, but a couple more.
That sounds good.
Let's, go back to your family. Okay. You mentioned earlier your dad and, some guys didn't really, buy into his system, so to speak, or his ways. And, in your family, who gave your dad the hardest time?
Well, there's no doubt I was the black sheep of the family. I mean, there's absolutely no, but somebody's got to make it easier for everybody else. And, he would tell stories about my escapades to my daughters, and they would chuckle and come back, Dad, is this true? And, I can't lie to your kids. And, it made it easier on my sisters. It made it especially easier on the last one, my brother Joel, because my mom and dad had seen it all by then, and it sort of just went with the flow by then.
Oh, very good. And then the next question would be, and I'm sure you get this one a lot, the best basketball player in the McDonald family.
Well, it depends who you ask. I always say that, and when you look at it, I was the only one that had to share a ball. I had to share a ball with my brother Mike, and I always tell this story in the state finals in '75. He hit the first 3 shots of the game, and my dad's philosophy was, shoot till you get hot, then keep shooting. And my brother kept shooting that game, and he didn't make any more, but he kept firing, and more power to him. That's when my dad would take you out if you passed up a shot that he knew you could make. And, and that just breeds confidence in yourself. And we were never afraid to take a big shot, whether it was 4 minutes to go in the game with the game tied or, the last possession. All of us that played for the Blue Streaks, you had instilled in you that capacity that, you know what, give me the ball, I'm going to make that shot. Because when you look at the record that we put up during a 4-year span, it's sort of amazing that, we did what we did, because we had a lot of close games. There was a lot of, you look at, McHale and John Radica, et cetera, that played for the Hibbing Blue Jackets. And Pat Foshee went to the University of Kentucky, played for the Virginia Blue Devils. I mean, there was a lot of really good players. There was a lot more kids in the schools up here on the Iron Range at the time, but there was a lot of good basketball and a lot of good players. And it was the only show in town. There wasn't all the electronic devices that kids have to play with now. Your entertainment was to go and watch, whether it be football or volleyball in the fall and basketball in the winter. That was your way out of the house and go cheer on the Blue Streaks.
Well, it's a little bit about the Iron Range, and people down here don't quite get it, that it is a specific kind of a distinctive culture. I remember I went to college at St. Thomas. I grew up in southern Minnesota, and all of a sudden I was, meeting some of these Rangers who came down from all those areas, Virginia, Blavic, et cetera. And I remember getting a conversation with a friend from Mankato, and we're trying to figure this out. And I finally said, well, they sort of seem like they're from America.
Well, a lot of people confuse us when Iron Rangers travel around the country. They think we're Canadians because we do have some of the similarities, some of the accents that the Canadians have. But, Iron Rangers pride themselves on the area and the work ethic, et cetera. And, you go someplace and you say, oh, I'm from the range. Oh, you're one of those, you're a Ranger. And, it's something that, it is a sense of pride for a lot of people. And, when I retired from Vermilion, I went into politics. And I remember I wanted my dad to hear it first before he read it in the paper that I was going to run for public office. So I went over there and I said, hey, Dad, I got something to tell you. And he's like, well, what'd you do now? And I said, well, I'm going to get into politics. I'm going to run for county commissioner. And he says, well, now it's official. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, it's official. You've lost all your marbles. And then the next thing I looked over at him and, there's a tear running down his eye. And he says, I'm so happy for you because you've got the right work ethic and you'll help people when you can help people. And that meant the world to me. I knew I had his support and I've enjoyed that. It's been a good transition for me the last couple of years to still use basically the same skill set that I did teaching and coaching and now transitioning into a public office position where you can reach out, talk to people and help them if you can.
Anything else before we wrap it up, Nick?
No.
Awesome. Me and your dad, I think we think a lot alike because when I thought about this today, and a lot of times when I do these shows, I think I'm not the smartest person here because the person that I'm talking to is obviously more intelligent than me. But for somebody to be a glutton for punishment over 35 years of coaching and then to go into politics, you lost your marbles.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, that's the thing. The other thing I said when I retired from coaching was, here puts it in perspective. I've coached for 35 years. The catch and coach as long as my dad, I would have had to coach for 24 more years. And you think about that and you're like, God, I don't know if I can make it for 24 more hours, let alone 24 more years. But that's just a testament to what he has done. And, his legacy, his coaching tree extends forever and ever and ever. I mean, I've got nephews now, his grandchildren all over the state coaching. My daughter's into it. I mean, it's in the blood. And, I really appreciate you guys throwing out the offer for me to come on tonight and spend some time with and share some special memories of my dad, because, he truly was a gem. And what he's done for not only kids from Chisholm, but kids throughout Minnesota and beyond speaks for itself.
And Paul, we thank you for coming on and joining us, and happy birthday. We really mean that. And
Thank you.
And our sympathies to your family on the loss of your dad, because, we didn't know him that well, but we knew him, just people that grew up in Minnesota. And so very special. And we thank you for your, being fun and enjoying those stories. And I coached at USD for a few years, so I got a lot of connections there. So since you're a Jackrabbit, some heat will be off me, because I had a Jackrabbit on, and that rivalry is still strong. And
it's great. And keep up the good work, man, and God bless you.
Yes, and hopefully we get to see each other in person someday soon, and when we're safe, and we can maybe have a soda pop to celebrate your dad's life and your politics, your political career, and all that stuff. So
I'll look forward to that, guys.
all right, take care.
Thank you.